Tell me about a time you delivered something important under pressure. This is a common behavioral interview question for software developers, backend developers, full-stack developers, senior developers, and team leads. Interviewers ask this question to understand how you perform under pressure, whether you can prioritize important work, how you balance speed and quality, how you communicate during tight timelines, how you manage risks and blockers, how you avoid rushed mistakes, whether you can deliver business-critical work responsibly. This question is especially important for current Java developers, backend developers, Spring Boot developers, full-stack developers, senior software developers, team leads, Agile teams, production support teams. The best way to answer this question is by using the STAR method. STAR means S, situation, explain the background. T, task, explain your responsibility. A, action, explain what you personally did. R, result, explain the final outcome. A good interview answer usually spends 10% situation, 10% task, 60% action, 20% result. The most important part is the action section, because interviewers want to understand how you handled pressure without sacrificing quality, communication, or production safety. Question: tell me about a time you delivered something important under pressure. Example 1. Delivering a production API fix under pressure situation. In one project, support reported that some users were getting errors when updating their customer profile. The issue happened after a recent Spring Boot API release. The problem was urgent because users could not complete an important profile update flow. Task: I needed to investigate the issue, fix it safely, coordinate QA validation, and support deployment under time pressure. Action: I first stayed calm and gathered facts instead of immediately changing code. I reviewed. See affected endpoint. See error message. See request payload. See LOUs. See correlation IDs. See deployment version. See recent code changes. See affected user count. I reproduced the issue in a lower environment using a similar request. I found that the service logic assumed an optional field would always be present. When that field was missing, the API failed. I communicated the root cause to the product owner, QA, and support team. Then I created a focused fix. The fix included CUC null safe handling, CUC validation update, CUC regression test for missing optional field, CUC test for optional field present, CUC test for valid request, CUC test for invalid request. I avoided making unrelated changes because the situation was time sensitive. After QA validated the fix, I supported deployment and monitored logs after release. Result: the issue was fixed quickly. Affected users could update their profiles successfully. The focused regression tests helped prevent the same issue from returning. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows calm under pressure, production ownership, root cause analysis, focused fix, QA coordination, safe delivery. Example 2. Delivering a business-critical report correction situation. In one application, business users reported that a daily report showed incorrect totals for certain date ranges. The report was important because leadership and operations teams used it for daily decisions. The correction was needed quickly. Task: I needed to investigate the report calculation, identify the issue, fix it, and validate the output with business users. Action: I first confirmed the expected and actual report values. Then I reviewed, affected date range, database records, report query, backend calculation logic, time zone conversion, canceled records, records near midnight, recent changes. I found that the report was using UTC date boundaries, while the business expected the local business time zone. I explained the issue in simple terms. The system was grouping some records by a different date boundary than the business definition of a day. Then I fixed the calculation logic. I added tests for check records near midnight, inclusive end date, month-end records, daylight saving time scenario, empty result, normal daytime records. I worked closely with QA and business users to validate sample reports before release. Result: the report totals were corrected. Business users confirmed that the output matched expectations. The team also updated reporting requirements to explicitly include time zone and date boundary rules. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows SEC business critical delivery, SEC pressure handling, SEC data investigation, SEC business communication, SEC regression testing, SEC stakeholder validation. Example 3. Delivering a feature for a fixed release date situation. In one sprint, our team had to deliver a customer search feature for a fixed release date. The feature was important because another team depended on the API for front-end integration. The timeline was tight, and the API needed filters, pagination, sorting, validation, and authorization. I was responsible for delivering the backend API and making sure the front-end and QA teams had what they needed to proceed. Action. I started by clarifying the most important acceptance criteria. I worked with the product owner, QA, and front-end developer to confirm. Searchable fields, required filters, optional filters, pagination rules, sorting behavior, empty result behavior, validation errors, role-based access, response format. Then I broke the work into focused steps. I implemented controller layer, service layer, repository query, response DTO, pagination, sorting, validation, authorization, unit tests, integration tests. To reduce pressure on the front-end team, I shared sample request and response JSON early. I also documented error responses, so QA could prepare test cases while I was still completing implementation. When one sorting edge case failed during testing, I fixed it quickly and added a regression test. Result: the backend API was delivered in time for the release. Front-end integration started earlier because the contract was clear. QA testing was smoother, and the feature was accepted by the product owner. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows: check. Delivery under deadline pressure. Check. Requirement clarification. Check. API design. Front-end and QA coordination. Check. Incremental delivery. Test coverage. Example 4. Delivering an urgent security fix situation. Before one release, the product owner raised an urgent concern about role-based access. There was a possibility that a normal user could access an admin-only action through the backend API if they bypassed the UI. The release deadline was close. Task: I needed to verify the authorization behavior and deliver a safe fix before release. Action: I reviewed both front-end and back-end access control. I checked. Check. UI visibility rules. Check. Spring security configuration. Endpoint access rules. Check. Service layer permission checks. Check. Admin role behavior. Check. Normal user behavior. Check. Audit logging requirement. I confirmed that the UI hid the action, but the backend needed stronger service layer authorization. I explained the risk to the team. Hiding the button in the UI is helpful, but the backend must still protect the API directly. Then I implemented backend role validation, service layer permission check, forbidden response for unauthorized users, audit logging, tests for admin access, tests for normal user blocked, tests for missing token. I worked with QA to validate both UI and API level access. Result: the release went out with stronger authorization controls. The security risk was fixed before production. The team also added role permission checks to future refinement discussions. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows confirmed security judgment, pressure handling, back-end authorization, clear communication, QA collaboration, release safety. Example 5. Delivering a performance improvement before release situation. During pre-release testing, we noticed that a search API worked functionally but became slow with broad search filters and larger data volume. The feature was important for the release, but releasing it without safeguards could affect user experience. Task: I needed to improve performance quickly while keeping the feature stable. Action: I reviewed the performance behavior. I checked response time, database query time, page size, filters used most often, sorting fields, index usage, timeout risk, payload size. I found that broad searches with large page sizes created heavy database queries. I focused on practical improvements instead of over-engineering. The changes included: check default page size, check maximum page size, database index for common filter, unsupported sorting validation, query optimization, performance test with larger data, monitoring after release. I communicated the trade-off to the product owner. The goal was not to remove useful search flexibility, but to protect performance and avoid timeouts. QA validated that the functional behavior stayed the same. Result: the API response time improved before release. The feature was delivered with lower production risk. The team also started reviewing performance earlier for search-related APIs. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows: check performance troubleshooting, delivery under pressure, database optimization, practical scope control, QA validation, production readiness. Example 6. Delivering a QA blocker fix before sprint close situation. Near the end of a sprint, QA was blocked while testing a backend feature. They found that one important scenario could not be tested because the required test data was missing, and one validation response was unclear. The story was important for the sprint goal. Task: I needed to help unblock QA quickly and make sure the story could still be tested properly. Action: I reviewed the blocked test case with QA. I clarified what scenario was blocked, what test data was needed, what expected result QA needed, what validation message should appear, whether the issue was test data related or code related, whether regression testing was needed. I created the required test data in the lower environment. Then I confirmed the validation response from the API and updated the story notes. I also added examples for copy, path, invalid input, missing required field, role-based access, empty result, expected status code. I stayed available while QA retested the feature. Result: QA was unblocked quickly. The story was tested before sprint close. The test notes also helped future regression testing. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows urgency handling, QA support, test data preparation, clear communication, sprint goal ownership, practical delivery support. Example 7. Delivering a data migration safely under pressure situation. In one release, we had to migrate customer records from an old data model to a new one. The migration was important for the release, but during test migration, we found missing fields, duplicate records, and unclear status mappings. The timeline was tight. Task: I needed to help deliver the migration safely without allowing bad data into production. Action: I gathered evidence from the test migration. I summarized total records processed, successful records, skipped records, duplicate records, missing required fields, unclear status mappings, records needing business review. I explained to stakeholders that rushing the migration without validation could create production data problems. Then I proposed a controlled plan. 6. Generate an error report. 6. Review unclear records with business users. Confirm status mapping rules. 6. Correct invalid records where possible. 6. Rerun test migration. 6. Validate record counts. 6. Prepare rollback plan. 6. Proceed after sign-off. I worked with business users and QA to confirm the mapping rules quickly. Result: the migration was delivered safely. Bad records were handled before production. The business team had confidence in the migrated data because they were involved in validation. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows key pressure handling, data migration ownership, business validation, risk communication, safe delivery, Data quality focus. Example 8. Delivering a hotfix after a release regression situation. After a release, support reported that one older API behaved differently after a shared validation refactor. The new feature worked correctly, but the shared change affected an existing flow. The issue needed quick attention because users depended on that older API. Task. I needed to deliver a hotfix quickly while ensuring the fix did not break the new feature. Action. I first reproduced the issue in a lower environment. Then, I traced all APIs using the shared validator. I found that the older API expected a slightly different validation behavior that was not covered by the new tests. I communicated the root cause to the product owner, QA, and support team. Then I fixed the shared validator to support both the new and existing behavior. I added tests for U feature validation, U older API validation, backward compatibility, U invalid input, U valid input, edge cases. I worked with QA to define a focused regression plan instead of retesting the entire system. After deployment, I monitored logs and error rates. Result. The hotfix restored the older API behavior. The new feature continued working correctly. The regression tests improved confidence in future shared code changes. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows hotfix delivery, shared code ownership, backward compatibility, focused regression testing, production communication, pressure handling, best short answer version. If you need a short interview answer, you can say ... In one project, support reported an urgent issue where some users were getting errors while updating their profile through a Spring Boot API. The request was important because users could not complete a key profile update flow. I joined the support discussion, gathered logs, correlation IDs, request payloads, deployment version, and recent code changes. I reproduced the issue in a lower environment and found that the service logic assumed one optional field would always be present. I made a focused fix by adding null safe handling and regression tests for optional field present, optional field missing, valid request, and invalid request. I communicated progress to support, QA, and the product owner. After QA validated the fix, I supported deployment and monitored production logs. As a result, the issue was fixed quickly, affected users could update their profiles, and the regression tests helped prevent the same issue from returning. Common mistakes to avoid. 1. Saying you just worked faster. Bad answer. I worked late and finished it quickly. Better answer. I prioritized the critical path, reduced unnecessary scope, communicated clearly, and kept testing focused. 2. Skipping quality because of pressure. Bad answer. We skipped testing because the deadline was close. Better answer. We used focused testing to cover the affected scenario and regression risk. 3. Not communicating. Bad answer. I just focused on coding until it was done. Better answer. I kept support, QA, product owner, and stakeholders updated with status and next steps. 4. Taking on too much scope. Bad answer. I tried to fix many related things at once. Better answer. I kept the change focused because the goal was safe delivery under pressure. 5. No learning or prevention. Bad answer. We delivered it. Better answer. We added regression tests, improved monitoring, updated documentation, or improved the checklist afterward. Best practices for answering this question. Use the STAR method. Explain why the work was important. Explain what pressure existed. Show how you prioritized. Gather facts before acting. Communicate clearly. Avoid unnecessary scope. Keep testing focused but safe. Validate the result. End with impact and prevention. What interviewers are looking for. Interviewers want to see whether you can stay calm under pressure, prioritize important work, deliver without panic, balance speed and quality, communicate with stakeholders, solve problems quickly, protect users and production, take ownership of the outcome. For senior roles, they also want to see Release judgment, production support maturity, risk-based decision-making, stakeholder management, technical leadership, quality ownership, ability to reduce pressure through structure. Strong words to use in your answer. You can use words like check, prioritized, triaged, focused, coordinated, communicated, mitigated, validated, delivered safely, reduced impact, protected quality, monitored, supported release, prevented recurrence. Example: I delivered it under pressure by triaging the issue, focusing on the critical path, communicating status clearly, making a safe fix, coordinating QA validation, and monitoring the result after release. Good under pressure delivery topics you can use. Depending on your experience, you can talk about RK, production API fix, urgent report correction, fixed release date API, urgent security fix, performance improvement before release, QA blocker before sprint close, data migration under pressure, hotfix after release regression, failed batch job recovery, urgent deployment configuration fix, integration blocker, urgent monitoring alert, urgent role permission fix, release smoke test failure, urgent client-facing defect. Final summary. Tell me about a time you delivered something important under pressure. Is an important interview question because software teams often face urgent production issues, tight deadlines, business-critical requests, and release pressure. The best answer should include: what needed to be delivered, why it was important, what pressure existed, how you prioritized, who you communicated with, what actions you took, how you validated quality, what result improved, what prevention step you added afterward. Good examples include: check production API fix, check business critical report correction, check fixed release date API, check urgent security fix, check performance improvement, check QA blocker, check data migration, check hotfix after regression. The strongest answers show calm execution, prioritization, communication, technical skill, safe delivery, and ownership under pressure.